They fired me at sunrise. The city was still black, cold, and breathless. The fluorescent lights in the factory spat blue onto the faces lined up for the graveyard shift. I stood at a battered steel bench, hands raw, breathing in dust and oil. The supervisor, his name was Roy, his eyes grey and heavy with sleep, came up behind me and said in a low, heavy voice, "Brian, office now." That was all. In a tiny back room with linoleum curled at the edges, he handed me a white envelope. "Didn't meet my eyes. Cutbacks," he said. "You're the last one in, I'm sorry." I stared at the floor, which was paler where the old lockers used to stand, and nodded. I walked out unceremoniously, past men in stained coveralls, past women who looked through me into the biting morning. My last sunrise on that floor, the sky was hard and flat. I walked all the way to the train station. I had $87 in my account, coins in my pocket, and nothing left except the vision that drew laughter from everyone I knew. I was a painter, I told myself I was anyway, but no one else believed me. Not my mother, who worked nights scrubbing hotel rooms and said, "You need to eat, Brian." Not my brother, who had 2 kids and sold kitchen benches, who used to call my sketches scribbles. Not the rest of our ugly, beautiful Sydney suburb, where people traded discipline for quiet desperation and bright dreams for the reliable, gentle ache of routine. I went home that morning and spread my canvas on the kitchen table. It was cold, the laminate sticky against my arms. My mother watched me as she filled her mug, no creamer left, just water and instant coffee. "So what now?" she asked. I shrugged, tried to make a joke. "Now I'm free to starve for my art." She shook her head. "You're nearly 30, Bri. You want to be Da Vinci, but who's paying you? Art's not real work. Why not try the plant down at botany, or office cleaning?" "I can't do it anymore, Mum," I said softly. That was the last breakfast I had at my mother's table, at least for a long time. I didn't pack much, just my paints, battered sketchbooks, canvas rolled tight, a single change of clothes, before catching the train into the city. Paddington, Surrey Hills, wherever cheap room shares cropped up in the listings taped to phone poles. 2 months later, I found a rickety upstairs room in a share house, sharing the kitchen with 3 students and a cook from Albury. It was damp, and the street outside filled with bin lorries and bus exhaust, but it was as close to the gallery district as I could get. I worked gigs nights, dishwashing, Uber Eats on a borrowed bike, odd days moving boxes at the wholesaler on Kent Street. Days I painted, my hands toughened and blistered. I scavenged wood for frames and coupons for paint. Those first months are a taut wire in my memory, a sense of sinking hunger dull in my stomach. Sometimes I wondered if my family was right, if I was only inflating my own delusions instead of being honest. My brother sent me texts, "When are you coming home, mate? Nobody's too good for a real job." I ignored him. My mother stopped calling, but I couldn't let the vision go. I walked Centennial Park, watched how lights spilled through the fig trees and knotted on old men's coats. I sketched buses, puddles, cathedral windows. The everyday shone to me, battered but burning. At night I'd listen to my own heart pounding as I painted, thick color, raw strokes, scenes from the city's underbelly, its grace and grime. It was years before anyone looked twice at my work. I submitted everything to group shows, art societies, queer collectives, rental galleries in Chippendale. Most were polite rejections, form emails, sometimes never a reply. Sometimes I'd overhear gallerists snicker. Once at a student exhibition, an older painter, a woman with silver hair in braids, stared at a stormy red cityscape of mine and murmured, "Daring, but not what people want." "Paint something lovely." She patted my arm like I was a child. I built routines to survive, pasta with instant sauce, early walks, cigarette breaks hunched in alleys while the sunrise bled pink along Oxford Street. I learned to stretch $5 across days. I befriended the bloke who ran the convenience store, who'd let me clean up graffiti in exchange for sandwiches. Of all the aches, my fingers, my bank account, the worst was isolation. I missed the factory's noise, but even more, I missed someone nodding at me, a simple morning mate. My vision grew inward. I painted the loneliness. Rooms with cracked plaster, shadows of hands against the wall, railway stations washed in blue neon. I burned for approval for presents, but there was no audience, only the canvas and me. Loss became familiar, it was the grain of the world. Through it all, my family's voices stayed in my mind, sturdy and doubting. They saw my failure long before I admitted it, my mother's refrain. "Art's a hobby, my brother, grow up, mate." These words burrowed under my skin like splinters. Then, almost 4 years after I left home, my luck flickered. A friend of a friend, marriager, a fellow painter, sharp and honest, told me about a new curator at a small space in Darlinghurst. The glass arcade. She's hunting for new names, Marriager said, running a thumb along her eyebrow. She wants stories, give her yours, email her tonight. I drafted a message, attached photographs of my best pieces, urban vistas, scarred beauty, quiet crises. I wrote about my background, my suburbs grit, my years in obscurity. I didn't expect a reply, but within 2 days I got an email back. The curator, Harriet Key, wanted to see the works in person. Walking to the gallery that afternoon, my hands shook so badly my coffee slopped over my wrist. Harriet met me at the door. She was direct, a little intimidating, her gaze quick but not unkind. She leaned each canvas against the wall, walking in slow arcs. She paused the longest at a canvas I'd painted at the lowest point of my hunger, a stormy depiction of my mother's kitchenette, fluorescent glare on battered plates, a single orange burning in the center like an ember. She crouched to examine the textures, her eyes flickered with something I almost recognized. This, she said, tapping the frame, this one feels true, too raw for most buyers, but this we'll risk. I rode home on that approval, a first fragile glimmer, like the city's dawn peeking above the terrace roofs. In the weeks before my debut show, I worked harder than ever, painting every day before my night shifts, refining, discarding. Harriet was blunt in her feedback, pruning whole swathes of my old work, but it felt like guidance rather than scorn. She called once at 2 a.m. after seeing a photo I'd sent her, that new one, the railway at dusk, that's your anchor, focus on what's real, not what's pretty. I took her words to heart. Opening night came, a press of bodies, a haze of white wine and conversation, the gallery too hot, too bright. I stood by the back wall, hands fidgeting in my pockets, waiting for someone to stop to look. For the first hour, most drifted past my paintings, their attention stolen by noisier pieces. My heart thudded emptily, expecting disappointment. Then, in the crush, 2 visitors stood for a long time by the orange-on kitchenette. They murmured, gestured, shifted closer. One turned, steady-eyed, and found me hovering by the doors. She walked over, hand outstretched, and introduced herself as Julia Ward, a local arts writer. How much of this is memory, she asked. All of it, I replied, voice thin and hoarse. She nodded. It shows there's real hunger here. That quote and her write-up in the Sydney Morning Herald changed everything. Sales trickled first, just enough to afford groceries without stress to buy better paint, then radio calls, interview requests, an agent, then collectors, invitations from bigger spaces, group shows, a commission from council to paint murals in Redfern Station. Each small victory felt like a rescue, as if I could finally look my younger self in the face and nod. You were right not to give in. I didn't call my family for a full year. There was shame and something brittle, anger and longing tangled. My brother's texts dwindled, my mother left voicemails, the sound crisp, always at odd hours, just checking you're alive, don't forget we love you. In the 5th year since I left home, I received an invitation to return for my cousin Jade's wedding. My first solo exhibition had just opened, 12 works hanging under strong white lights at a new gallery in the Rocks, people lining up out front just to see my name, my vision of Sydney. I hesitated weeks before replying. In the end, it was Harriet who convinced me. Don't let success turn you to stone, she said, smiling at my reluctance. Go back, let them see. The day I stepped off the train at my old station in the west, a sour wind blew newsprint across the platform. The suburb looked smaller and stranger, as if shrunk in my absence. My heart tumbled with nerves, old shame, old love. I carried nothing but my phone and a thin, nervous smile. My mother opened the door, her eyes lingering on me, not quite letting in her smile. She looked older, but her touch was strong. My boy, she whispered, holding me awkwardly, not sure whether to laugh or scold. You really hears? I'm really hears. Dinner that night felt like old rituals, stiff shoulders, too many silences. My brother said little, sipping beer. His eldest, Sophie, watched me curious but shy. Conversation circled around mundane topics, footy, car troubles, school routines, the wedding plans. It was after dinner, over washing up, that my mother finally said, "Your Uncle Rob saw something in the paper about your show." My brother, tone-tight, muttered, "Yes. Saw your face in the newsagents, didn't believe it." I said nothing, drying plates and stacking them. I could feel the tension, the weight of years pressing all our joints. Later, as the extended family trickled in, cousins, aunts, friends, I saw the skepticism reappear. Faces bemused, voices low. "Paintings, eh?" someone muttered. "Not bad for a kid who never finished TAFE." Laughter, doubting sideways glances. I withstood it as best I could. That old ache of being small, of being surveilled and judged, crept up my spine, but I was different now. My back was set straight by something only I carried. That weekend, my cousin Jade shyly asked whether I'd show the family my exhibition. I hesitated, but she insisted. Some of the mob from around here would love to see what you've done. I called Harriet and she arranged for the gallery to open that Sunday just for us. It rained that morning. The city felt washed, the air sharp with eucalyptus and wet concrete. I stood in the lobby at the Rocks, shifting from foot to foot as the family group streamed in, my mother in her best coat, her hands twisting at her side. My brother silent and wary, Sophie tugging at his hand. Most had never set foot in a gallery. They drifted in uncertain clumps, slow, eyes darting. The space was bright, each painting under its own halo. My mother's face paled, seeing her tiny kitchen, rendered in color and anguish, hung beneath strong glass. My brother stood, frowning at the cityscape I'd painted from the roof of our old brick unit, each window a jewel of cheap gold and ugly hope. I stood by, quiet, almost breathless. Then, over and over, I heard something change, the hush of realization, the respectful step back, the murmurs, "I know this place. That's our train line." Sophie reached out reverently, finger almost touching the swirling lamplight in one painting, O'Connell Street at dusk. An older cousin, gruff and dismissive at first, pointed to a canvas of kids playing footy in a waterlogged park. "That's us, Brian. Did you remember every ripped goalpost?" His laugh was shaky, eyes wet. I walked my mother over to the orange-on kitchenette piece. She paused, her hand lifted, trembled slightly. All the years, the questions, the worries unsaid hung between us. "That's my old kettle," she said, voice cracked. "You painted it just right, even the chip on the rim." I nodded. "I painted it for you, Mums." She touched my sleeve, eyes shiny. "I never understood this, Brian, but I see it now." Other voices joined, approval scattered at first, then gathering strength. "Didn't know art could be about us," a cousin said. "This is real. This is our world." My brother lingered at the far wall, studying a painting I'd made of us as kids. Two boys, backs to the viewer, standing by a mangled fence with the city blooming in the fog beyond. At last he looked at me, eyes soft with something like pride. "You never quit, did you?" he said quietly. "I was wrong." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. We left the gallery in pale sunlight, the city's traffic muted by the glass doors. My family, always skeptical, now stood a little closer to me. The weight of rejection had not vanished, but something had changed, a bridge rebuilt, or maybe a new foundation laid atop the old ruins. Back at my mother's table that night, surrounded by chatter, by memories retold and upgraded, she nudged a mug of tea toward me. The lamp flickered, light catching on her knuckles. "I'm proud of you, Brian," she said softly. "So am I thought, not because I proved myself to them, but because I held the vision close when it was only ember and darkness. I reclaimed what I lost, and I returned, not as a prodigal, but as a painter bearing witness to the world that made me." I sat at the kitchen table, sketchbook open, the soft tick of the clock and the hum of familiar voices filling the room. I picked up my pencil and began to draw, catching the way light curled through the window, dusty and rising, like hope, like memory, refusing to be snuffed out.